Hey, it's Stacy. If you are enjoying Tell Me What It's Like, please take a moment to go into your podcast app and leave a rating and review. It helps other people who might like this show find it. Thanks for your support. This is Tell Me What It's Like, a show about uncommon experiences and what they can teach us about the world. I'm Stacy Rain. Nearly 30 years ago, clinical psychologist Dr. Stein's company developed a tool to measure emotional intelligence. It was this work that led him to a phone call that would change his career. The call was from the psychologist of a new and little-known show called Survivor, and he was looking to understand how that tool could help the show. Dr. Stein, welcome to Tell Me What It's Like.
Great to be with you, Stacy.
I am excited for this conversation, and I want to start with the term emotional intelligence because that is something we hear a lot of, but I'm not sure we all fully understand what it means. So you're the guy. Let's figure it out.
Well, I'll break it down in the simplest form. So it basically can be described as three things. One is the ability to be aware of emotions. That's be aware of your own emotions or the people around you, to recognize what they're going through. The second one is the ability to manage emotions. So if I'm feeling anxious or angry, my ability to manage that emotion and put it into a more helpful emotion, and also to manage your emotions, which may seem like a difficult thing, but maybe I can make you smile, or I can make you sad, or I can manage your emotions. And the third area is the ability to use emotions to really motivate yourself or get things done. And that's an area that we've been doing some research with athletes, for example, and performers, because they have to get on the spot and perform whether they feel like it or not. So we've been looking at, what drives them, what makes them do that. So if you understand those three things, you have a good handle on what emotional intelligence actually is.
And when you talk about working with athletes, does that mean like managing nerves and things like that?
Yeah, although to some degree it's nerves, it's sort of turning it into excitement. So they're not nervous, but they channel that energy into excitement for the challenge. And that's part of emotional intelligence. Again, when I talk about using emotions, you want the right emotions at the right time to do things. So athletes need the right emotion, and if you're doing a presentation, you need the right emotion, right? You don't want to look scared or nervous about what you're doing. You want to channel that into excitement about your topic and get everybody into it.
I'm giggling because I heard the other day someone said, if your heart is pounding before a presentation, just tell yourself that that's your heart clapping for you in excitement.
Exactly. That's great. And that's an example of emotional intelligence.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Reframing that emotion or that feeling.
That's a good point. Reframing. I like that. So you have been working with reality TV shows. Why is emotional intelligence something that they called you about in the very early days of Survivor?
Well, there's a number of things we look at when casting a show. And as a psychologist, I guess the most important thing is to make sure it's safe, the mental health of the individual. They're capable of going through, because there's a lot of stress involved in some of these shows. So that's number one. We want to make sure that this person can actually endure the process. But beyond that, we also look at what are their characteristics? How do they fit in terms of a cast? Because like a Broadway show, you're casting characters and you want to see how they all interact. So emotional intelligence helps us in terms of, for one thing, how will they deal with the stress? Can they manage their emotions well? And it also gives us a clue on how they deal with others, if they have good interpersonal skills, and are they going to get into fights with people all the time? Because impulse control is another thing that's part of emotional intelligence. So if they're very impulsive, we know some of the behaviors that we're likely to expect.
So you have to think about, how's this person going to interact with this person? We probably want to have them together, or we probably don't, that kind of thing.
Yeah, or we actually often don't push them together. We know that they're going to gravitate towards each other. That's part of it.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
You can do, okay, so we're going to have to get into that. So this first phone call that you got from the psychologist, I want to go back to that moment. Can you tell me a little bit about the call and what you were thinking?
Yeah, so my colleague had called me from LA, and well, the way it went was he said, he started asking about emotional intelligence because it was new at the time. Nobody really knew a lot about emotional intelligence. Nobody really heard of it back then. So he wanted to know more about it and what it consisted of. And as I told you, we went through some of that. And then he says to me, I was at a party the other night and I met this guy. He does TV shows. His name is Mark. And he says he needs a psychologist for some new show that he's putting on. And I said, well, what kind of a show is it? And he says, oh, they're going to take these people and put them on an island and vote someone out every week. And I said, wow, who's going to watch that? I mean, that's weird, But I did, that was the beginning of Survivor. And it was Mark Burnett that he met at the party. And Richard was the psychologist for that show. So I helped him. We used the test. We found it was really useful in terms of helping to cast Survivor. And then, he went on to Apprentice, and we used emotional intelligence as part of Apprentice. And eventually, I came out from under a rock. People found out that I had some involvement in this, and I started getting calls if I would help on some shows. And then, of course, once you start in something like that, you get a reputation, and if it's good, they keep calling back. And here I am 20 years later, and I'm working on more shows than I can deal with. I just keep getting those calls back.
Are you a reality TV fan?
You know what? I really wasn't. I mean, I do enjoy it. I like it. And I look at it psychologically. As a psychologist, I've been studying it in terms of the characters and how the characters fit together. It's a kind of thing. I used to do research at a university at one point, and you're really restricted on the things you can do because there's ethics and all these other things. You have to go through these committees. I can do stuff here that I could never do in a university. I mean, we can test people in ways that and it's not because it's unethical. It's because, we have certain things in place. We have medics on call 24/7. I'm on call 24/7. Deception isn't allowed anymore in psychological research. We use deception. That's part of reality TV. Reception is great. And it's not as though people don't understand what they're getting into. If you want to be on a reality show, it's not going to be smooth sailing. So you're going into a bit of a roller coaster. So all in all, I've had a ball with this stuff, and I see it as my laboratory. It's a research laboratory.
That's fascinating. I'm wondering if certain types of people, like you said, they gravitate to each other, but do certain types of people gravitate to reality TV shows? Because I feel like that's something I would never want to do.
Of course. Yeah, you have to score high in narcissism.
Oh.
I don't think you'd score high in narcissism, right? So
good,
people who want to be on, I would say 90% score pretty high in our narcissism measures. So they want to expose themselves. They want to be out there for a number of different reasons, but they're excited about doing it. Wow,
that is fascinating. So walk me through exactly what happens. You get hired on a show.
Me?
And then what do you do from there? You're casting these people essentially.
I get a call from a producer, and we go over what the nature of the show is. And typically in casting, there's a casting team, so they'll put a call out, and depending on the show, like if it's like Big Brother or Amazing Race, those shows will get thousands of people who want to be on it. So casting is really good. So the casting team will narrow that down to maybe 60 people or so.
Wow.
And then I'll come in. And I have a bit of a team as well. And we'll do psychological assessment on all 60, and I'll do interviews with them. And then we'll sort of give reports on each one to production. And then there'll be a meeting, and they'll narrow it down to whatever it is, 12 or 18 or whatever that show is looking for. They'll narrow it down to those characters, and they'll make their selection.
And so part of your role is like we said earlier, deciding how people are going to work together, whether they're sort of mentally able to go through the process. Because it does seem on some of these shows that I've watched, some of them seem a little more intense than others.
Some of them are.
Thinking Real Housewives and
that's not one of the more intense ones, but yeah, some of them are really intense.
Yeah. So are you aware of, okay, the dynamics of this show are X, and so you're thinking about that the whole time that you're
Oh, pretty
talking to these
much.
different
Yeah, the
people?
show has a certain flow. Some are challenge shows, some are social experiment shows, like the Big Brother shows. The Amazing Race would be like the challenges. Some are more physical in terms of their challenge. Some are dating shows, so I'm looking for
Mm-hmm.
different things in dating shows. So there's a variety. Some are skill based. I do cooking shows, so everything from a master chef to a great Canadian baking show. So again, it's going to be different. It's a different environment. We did a glass blowing show with world famous glass blowers. Yeah, it's on Netflix.
It's
You can watch it.
everything.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's so many. Miniatures. We did people who specialize in making like doll houses. All these miniatures. They were like world famous for. If you know that world, I didn't know that world, but they make miniatures. So we
Yeah.
had reality shows of all shapes and sizes, and we just have to make sure it's safe for the people who go into them.
Got it. A couple of questions there from what you just said. The cooking shows, I wouldn't think that you would really. I'm thinking about like, the Housewives and some of the other ones that are very intense. Are the cooking shows that intense?
Some of them, there's one in particular that was very intense. I don't know if
Uh-huh.
you watched Yes Chef on with Martha
Mm.
Stewart, but it was a really interesting show because they brought in professional chefs who had personality problems, like who were angry or who were obsessive compulsive about stuff. They were nominated by people who worked with them, and that was one of the shows I had to be there constantly because and it was great. It's a great show if you watch it. Martha Stewart was coaching some of these people and bringing them around. So yeah, you do get sometimes people get upset even in cooking shows about various things or baking shows, but we try and get people who are going to, for the most part, be pretty stable.
And you're there throughout the process. So
I'm
maybe not.
either there on premise in set or available, by Zoom or whatever
Mhm.
mechanism.
So if these issues arise, you can help with those.
Yeah, I'm called right in. Sometimes I have to go right to the studio, deal with the person, see what's going on, sort of walk them through it, and see what we do with it. I mean, sometimes they'll stay on the show. Sometimes it's time to leave. It's really too much for them. Very rarely, which means that we do a pretty good job casting. So it's
Yeah.
very rare that someone has to leave a show, but occasionally it happens.
Are you able to give me an example and sort of walk me through that moment of having to do this with somebody on a show?
Wow, there's so many different scenarios. I mean, the most common, I guess, is just somebody getting very anxious, upset, missing their family,
Mm.
worried about how they're going to look to millions of people out there. They feel that, oh my God, I really suck at this. People are going to hate me. I'm going to get nasty social media once I get out of here. So really walking them and talking them through it. So, one thing that has worked a lot for me with candidates is when we sit down and go through it and I say to them, okay, I want you to just sort of think forward like 5 years down the road. When you look back on this experience, because this is a once in a lifetime experience, when you look back on this, how would you want to see yourself? Would you want to see yourself as someone who walked out in the middle of a show, or would you want to see yourself who made it to the end? Look at the bigger picture of what this leaves. And in one case, I did that, and the person went on and won the show and won a bunch of money. So ever since, he's thanked me, for making sure that he stayed with it and ended up winning the show.
Yeah, I was about to say you probably got a huge thank you at the end.
Yeah.
So one of the actual baking shows that I do watch with my kids is kids baking shows or
Hmm.
kids baking shows. I'm guessing this process has to happen, especially when there's kids involved. Am I
Yeah,
right on
yeah,
that?
yeah. I worked on a few kids shows, and I want to interview the kid and the parents, just to find out the kid really wants to do this, not being pushed by the parents to do
Oh,
this, and the kid's stable enough. The kid's going to be able to manage this, sees it as a fun experience. Find out the reason why they want to do it and their ability to really make it through the show.
yeah.
Kids shows are fun. I mean, if the kids like it and the show goes well, they have a blast.
They
And
do.
some of them, they tell their friend, they become famous in their school. Everyone wants to, know this kid, get a selfie. That's the amazing thing about reality TV. I take people who are, unemployed, living in their mother's basement, playing on video games all day long, and we make them into stars. They finish with a show, and they're out there getting selfies. They get paid to go to bars, and girls come up to them like they're famous people. I mean, it's hilarious.
Oh my gosh. I have to say, when it comes to the kids shows, the sort of hardest moments for me are, of course, when, they get sent home because they lost a challenge and they're crying. And I'm just like, oh, these poor kids, but they do okay. You've sort of
It's
screened them.
great, and we need more of that. Kids have to learn that you don't always win in life. You have to learn how to deal with not winning at something. And I'll spend time with them talking about that. Listen, you did a great effort, and that's what's important. Doesn't mean you have to win every time. What's better is that you learn from your experience and appreciate the person who won. It's a good thing.
Yeah, so part of your job, you work on screening them, you work with them throughout the show, but you also work with them once the show's closed, and that's what
Yeah.
you're referencing.
Yeah, I usually do a debrief at the end. On some shows, it's for everybody. Whether you win or lose, we do a debrief. We got to transition them back into reality, into the real life. And it's hard for many of them because, social media is brutal. It really is. It's brutal. And I try and prepare everybody for the social media that's going to follow the show. Even if you're the best, most angelic character on there are people who are going to hate you. And you got to prepare. It's not you that they hate. It's some image they saw on a screen. They saw you for whatever. If they see you for 30 minutes, they can hate on you. It's not who you are. So there's a lot of work that has to be done. When I started doing this, social media wasn't a thing. It was just, like fan mail or whatever. So it's really changed the industry, I feel, since social media has become such a big thing.
That's really interesting. A fact that used to not, no one had to worry about that. But now there's a bunch of keyboard warriors that feel like their opinion can be aired without, any repercussions. I mean, in the past, you'd have to write it down in a letter and mail it or see them on the sidewalk and tell them to their face. But now anybody can comment. I feel like that would be really tough for some people.
And the thing about telling them to their face is interesting too, because what I find, even if you're the villain, you're the worst villain on the show, and they do all this hate stuff on their keyboard, when they actually see you on the street or at an airport, they want a selfie with you. They want your autograph. This is a thing that is just hilarious because they come back and tell me, you wouldn't believe this, Doc, but I was at the airport and 5 people came up to me and asked me for a selfie. Now these people hated me, So it's like, I sort of compare it to professional wrestling used to be like that, where you have these bad guys in wrestling and they live off being villains and bad guys, but people love them. When you see them on the street or in a restaurant, you want to be with them.
Do some people get on these shows and want to play the villain? Is that their sort of goal, or are just some people just the villain?
Some people want to be the villain, and if you fake it, we try to screen you out. By the way, you can't fake being a villain. You got to have certain characteristics that make you good at being a villain. So yeah, I get people saying, "Oh, I saw your show with such and such, and he wasn't really bad. I can show you what really bad is." And I say, "Oh, really?" So you sometimes they want to play the villain, but it's hard to get a really good villain.
What do you mean by that?
Well, you need somebody who really, they know the difference between real life and the game. So they know the game, they're strategic, and they know how to be your best friend and then dump you 5 minutes later, or lie about you or whatever on the show. We make sure that's not a real life characteristic, but they have no difficulty doing these kinds of villainous things on TV.
I see what you're saying. So you're saying like they're not necessarily like that in real life. They wouldn't turn around and backstab a friend, but they're totally cool to do that because they get that it's not, it may be called reality, but it's not.
Well, there is a reality component to it. I mean, your feelings and emotions are real. That's why it's reality TV. The situations aren't. That's what we set up, right? We put you in a situation that's not real, but we see how you do. If I explain reality TV to people by if you're old enough to remember a show called Candid Camera, where they used to set up things and put people in these situations, and you see how they behave. Well, this is just an extension of that. All reality TV today is an extension of that. We all set up situations, we throw people in them, and we watch them behave. It's like a fishbowl.
That's fascinating. Why do you think people love reality TV so much?
Because it reminds them of themselves, or reminds them of their friends and the people they know, and they see what I call now the archetypes. They see archetypes that are familiar to them, and they find people that they love. They find people that they hate. They find people that they have all these. It's like rooting for a sports team, right?
Yeah.
My favorite team, and they do anything for their favorite team. And reality TV becomes like that. They see somebody that either they're the comic, they're really funny, and they got to watch this person, or they're strategic if they're into that, or they're what I call a hot mess. They just emotional all over the place, and you say, "Oh my God!" It's like watching a car accident. On the highway, people stop, and look 6 lanes over to see an accident. Well, sometimes reality TV is like that.
Yeah, totally. I also think, it can bring people together in a way when they're talking about the show, because there are so many different characters, and it is in some way real life. Can you believe that so-and-so did this? You can do that with other shows, but it isn't the same as when you're connected. Like if you want to watch it with your family and you guys bond over the different characters.
Yeah,
Is that
absolutely. That
Yeah.
happens so much. And again, it's because, drama's drama, right? It has its place, but it's drama. It's not real. You're watching something, but you're watching this. It's real. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know who's going to blow up. You don't know who's going to get into a fight with who. It's like real. It's the people you know. They're just like you. It's your next door neighbor. It's the person across town. And that's what makes it so compelling. You're watching people just like you. They're not actors. They're not professionals. And they get into these crazy situations. And then you say to yourself, well, what would I do if I was in there, right?
Oh, yeah. I would never do that. I would never stab somebody in the back, but
Yeah.
some people will. So you're saying you don't know what they're going to do, but you actually kind of do know what people are going to do. You said earlier.
Not to the microsecond. You have an idea of how they're going to behave, but you never know who's going to win. Like I try and predict the top 3, like the top third of the group on certain characteristics, but you never really know, because some people are fairly unpredictable under those circumstances. Things happen, and that's what makes it, again, exciting. You want to watch that. When we see that happen, you're sitting on the edge of your chair saying, "Oh my God, did he really do that?" How are the others going to react to that? It's really crazy.
What are some of you said you can kind of tell who's going to gravitate towards each other. And I thought that was an interesting statement. I would love to know more about this.
Well, it starts with very basic things, like people who come on and say, I'm looking for a relationship, I'm open, and they know that they're screened by someone like me, so they're not going to be an axe murderer or something, right? Some women have been through some pretty awful dating situations, so they figure doing it on TV maybe is safer than doing it online or whatever.
Wow.
So sometimes it's certain characteristics. This person's outgoing. They like certain hobbies and certain things. This person has a similar, number of hobbies or types of hobbies that they like. They both seem to have some overlapping characteristics. So it would be interesting to see if they hook up, and we call them showmances, if they have a showmance.
I love that term. Yeah, I'm thinking about sort of the type of people, the type of friends that I know I really enjoy. And I've noticed over time that they have certain characteristics that are very different from me. And I appreciate those things in them. And so I kind of wondered if the way you say when they gravitate towards each other, if that was what you meant.
Well, they do. We do strive for diverse casting. If you watch, at least the shows I work on, for the most part, have a very diverse cast. People from different backgrounds, people who are more educated, less educated, street smart people, book smart. We have people from different cultures that we've built in, different, sometimes political views, which is interesting these days. So we try and make it as diverse as we can, because that's where the sparks fly. That's where things get interesting. But also, as you say, sometimes there's relationships from those sort of opposite seeming people, right? From different parts of the country where they've seen the world completely differently.
That is fascinating. So, in your day-to-day work with these shows, what does that look like for you?
It varies depending on the show. If I'm on set, it's spending long hours on a set. Uh,
And what are you doing when you're on set all day?
well, I mean, we're waiting for the shoot and for the elimination or for what's going to happen so I can meet with the person.
Gotcha.
But aside from that, I love I mean, I meet with the wardrobe people. I'm friends with, the one who does all the dressing. I'm friends with the makeup people. I'm friends with the camera people. I love being on a set. I mean, I love schmoozing with everybody that's there. They have great food, they always have the craft is amazing on TV sets. To me, it's like party time. Like people have said, when are you going to retire? When are you going to stop working so hard? I didn't know I was working. I mean, I wish I said this by accident to one of the producers once. We were watching a scene and we were talking about retirement and this and that. And I accidentally said, John, I'd probably do this for free. I'm having so much fun. I said, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that. He looked at me and said, really?
So when you're there, you're really just making sure, hey, I'm here in case someone needs me, or when someone gets eliminated, they're probably going to need to chat about it. And they're not stopping the show a lot of times. It's really
don't
just
stop the
okay.
show. No, and it's not probably on some shows it's mandatory. I do have to make sure they're okay, make sure the experience was good, prepare them a bit for how they were perceived, so they'll know what to expect when they go out. So at some shows it's mandatory that I do a debrief just to prepare them, and sometimes we do follow-ups, and if sometimes they need longer care, and I have therapists that I refer to all around the country that will help with that.
And when you say they need longer care, is that because of the show? Is that because they maybe needed it before they even showed up?
For some of them, it's something that's been happening that was triggered and it continues. For some people, some people have funny expectations. They think they're going to go on a show and become Kim Kardashian or become, Paris Hilton or some famous person, and that rarely happens. You don't often end up like that. You're probably well known for the next 3 months or so, 4 months. And if you're a real reality TV star, then you have a career that lasts a bit longer, but you're not quite at the level of a big movie star for the most part.
Do you try to tell them this? Like, are you able to identify in your interviews with them that this might be what they're thinking about? And do you try to sort of hedge that a little bit?
Well, I always try and find their motivation, because there's many different motivations. Everyone assumes it's this or that, but there's a number of different motivations for being on one of these shows. So I just want to make sure their expectations aren't out of line. I mean, sometimes they're more realistic. Oh, I want to be a radio announcer, or I want to be a podcaster who does reality TV, right? And that's realistic. They could do that, especially if they're knowledgeable. They follow a lot of shows. But if they want to be Kim Kardashian and get paid thousands of dollars for making appearances, that may not happen. So it's just keeping it in perspective.
Yeah. I would also wonder if there are some people that they want a total radical life change for a minute. Does that happen?
For some, yeah, it's definitely, they go in there for a change. It's a total change. They sometimes think it's kind of a vacation type change, but it's usually not really a vacation type change.
Oh, yeah.
It's a bit more stressful than that. But yeah, it's for change. It's for excitement. It's, some people say, their husband wants to climb mountains. I want to be in a reality show.
Oh, well, it also made me think, like, I know you've worked on the Amazing Race Canada. There are probably people that want to prove something to themselves too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We get a lot of times on those kinds of shows, they want to prove that they've got, even on the baking shows and cooking shows, I get people who are home cooks, right? But all their friends and relatives say, man, you're so good. Oh, your stuff is delicious. You should be on TV. So they never thought of that. And they say, man, I come from some small town in the middle of the country. I don't know what to compare myself to. So they get on a reality show and they get a real, top-notch chef evaluating their food. And that's very exciting for them. And they get like-minded people, which they don't have in their hometown. Nobody is obsessive about, this kind of dough versus that kind of dough where they live. And then they meet all these like-minded people and they love it. It's a life-changing experience for many of them.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully they are pretty good, because then that could be crushing too.
You
if
wouldn't
you
make it on if you weren't pretty good. You wouldn't even get on.
That's a good point. So we talked about how these shows, they can be trying for the contestants, or they also, but you've mentioned that you talk to all sorts of people when you're on the set, even just as friends. But can this be difficult for people like the producers, and as they're watching some of this stuff go down?
I was called to a set yesterday, and after I dealt with the person, I sat around with a group of producers and says, "Can you work with us too?"
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, it does happen. It does get stressful for production at times.
Yeah. So I know one of the things that when you're screening for contestants, you've said that you like to try to find people who are going to defy expectations, who maybe break the stereotypes. And I would love to hear a little bit more about that. Like what are those examples, and what are you looking for?
Yeah, so sometimes we break like gender stereotypes. I remember one time we had somebody who was a very athletic person, but he was gay, and he sort of gave the impression of being gay, but when it came to competitions, he beat everybody because he was really an athlete, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was great to fun. I still kept in touch. He has appeared with us on. We've done presentations on a reality show, and he's someone I picked to say what the experience is like for someone like him, because someone who grows up being teased for their identity and who they are, and has a rough time in their life. And then you put him on a show like this, and this person was a star. Like he came in second on the show,
Wow.
and his whole life changed. And I love using someone like that as an example, because he was totally not what people expected when they saw him or whatever. So that's one kind of expect. The other one I like is. Let's call it the dumb blonde. I test their IQ, right? And I get some beautiful blonde woman with an IQ of 148 or something, really smart, but doesn't come across that way, right? I guess if you think of the movie Legally Blonde or something, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I love casting them because they're so underestimated,
Right.
and they come out really strategic and really smart, and nobody knew what was going on. So, those kind of breaking the stereotype, I find a lot of fun. And that's why I say it's like a psychological experiment. We put these different types together and see how they perform.
I'm thinking about how a lot of times in these shows, they're living with everyone too.
Mhm. Yeah.
I would find that really stressful. Do all of them find that stressful? Do they love it? How does that go?
Well, most of them are a bit younger than you, number one.
Yeah.
And they're in their 20s or so. And no, I don't think the living together is that stressful for them. I mean, they're kids for the
Yeah.
most part. They enjoy that.
But even if they got beef with somebody and they got to,
It is. Well, the way I describe it to some going in, I'm saying, everything is sort of magnified when you're in that house and you're living together. So, if someone refuses to pass you the butter at breakfast, that's a huge thing, right? You magnify all these little things, and that's what creates the sparks. But living together, for the most part, I think they really enjoy that. They look forward to that.
Okay, so the experience is it's like a dorm room.
Yeah.
Reinvented. Another thing that I've heard about reality TV is the questions are usually, is that really how it was, or did the tape cuts make it seem that way? So when people leave and they're the villain, were they really the villain, or did it just cut that way?
Okay, so we can't make anybody do anything or say anything. So what we can do, though, is amplify what they do and say. So you may say some stupid things to somebody, and it happened very quickly and whatever, but it's on camera, and that can be a major part of your character. So we don't make it up. We don't make up stuff. And it's true, some people don't realize how they're going to be perceived. And I'm dealing with a show now where we have to deal with them after the show was aired, because some of them didn't know that they were going to be perceived in a certain way. Now, we've gotten through it, because in the big picture, they're getting endorsements. They're getting a lot out of being on the show,
Yeah.
even though they're not perceived as the best light. But it was their actual behavior. It wasn't that we were making it up. That's the way they are. And they've learned a lot about themselves and learned a lot about how they deal with other people. So on the one hand, they're grateful for the learning experience. On the other hand, we get them to ignore the hate stuff. And on top of that, they're making money doing
Yeah.
endorsements and going to bars and hanging out. They're getting paid for that now. So enjoy it.
Yeah, it elevated their character in a way because they became the villain.
Absolutely. And the other nice thing that you probably don't hear much about is that even though there's all these fights or whatever on set, after it's over, the cast bonds.
Really?
There's an incredible bond. Yeah, they have WhatsApp groups and they're in touch for long periods of time. They visit each other's cities. They go out together. It's amazing to see some of the bonding that goes on following some of these shows.
What are some other things that we don't know about reality TV? That surprises me that people stay, that they become, a group.
Well, it's an experience that you can't explain. I can't explain to you what it's like to live in one of these shows. Only they know because they experienced it, and they try and tell their friends or their parents or whoever, but they don't get it. You don't really, really know unless you've done it. And they have that shared experience, and that shared experience leads to bonding. It's amazing how close they are. What else don't you know? I don't know. It's. I guess the main thing that people don't understand because they think it's fake is that the emotions are real. I mean, we try and get those emotions, and that differentiates it from drama. Actors have emotions, but they're acting. They cry, they scream, they're angry, but they're not real. And at some level, we know that in our brain that this is just a movie. But when you watch this stuff, you're looking at it and you see that's real.
Yeah.
It's real.
In some of these shows, I will say that you see glasses of wine being poured and beers being had. Does sometimes the alcohol induce the emotion or sort of magnify it?
It can, but believe it or not, shows I'm working on, one of the biggest complaints I get, we limit the alcohol because there's liability. There's lawyers on the networks, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay.
So the alcohol is limited. So the biggest complaint I get from my kids, why are we only allowed this many drinks? Why couldn't we have more drinks? I go on weekends with my buddies and have way more drinks than that, and I can hold my own. And that's one of my biggest complaints. So, no, we don't ply them with alcohol. We probably undersupply them in terms of what they're used to, and that's kind of funny.
And they'll thank you later because
Actually, I had just had one the other week thank me that she felt it was probably better that she didn't have 15 drinks.
yeah. Although if I was going to be in all these high emotions, I'd be wishing for a glass of wine, I think. So what you've talked about these different archetypes that you'll see or that you look for in the shows. What more can you tell me about that?
So I've sort of identified about 12 archetypes that we see, and I'm actually writing a book about that. So it'll be things like obviously the villain, that type of person, but we also have the hot mess, the person who just can't regulate their emotions. They're just getting over emotional about almost everything. We have the comic relief, the person who just doesn't take anything seriously, is always cracking jokes. We have the underdog with a heart of gold, the person who's under the radar, who you don't even pay attention to till about the third or fourth show. You don't see them. Social butterfly. We have the person, they don't really, people form alliances, but the social butterfly just goes from one to the other, and they don't usually win, but they become friends with everybody, right? So those are the strategist, the mastermind, the person who's always plotting 3 steps ahead on what to do. Those are some of the archetypes. The chaos agent is another one who causes chaos, where without even trying, drops a bomb, says something that's so ridiculous and stupid and gets everybody angry. We call him the chaos agent.
Are you going to give examples from real life TV shows in your book?
Yes.
I can't wait for this because as you're naming these, I'm thinking of people I know like, oh, that person is, the comic relief, or that person's the social butterfly.
Yeah, I've got examples of each of them. Also, not just in reality TV examples, but business world examples of people who fit those.
Oh, I can't wait for this. Will I be able to tell who I am in the book?
Yeah, we have a test that you can take.
Oh, fun.
We have a
Okay.
fun little test that will see which category you fit into, up to 3 different categories that you might fit.
I cannot wait for that. So what can people learn from what you've learned and what you've learned about the world?
Well, I think what they can learn is a lot about behavior and seeing people in these stressful situations. You can learn about what tends to work and what doesn't tend to work. I mean, if you get in an argument, screaming louder is probably not a good thing. So maybe you learn about the person on the set who de-escalates. Well, I call them the mom dad of the set. They know how to de-escalate these fights, what to say, how to sort of cool things down. You learn a lot about relationships. You learn a lot about controlling your own behavior or how you might behave in certain situations. There's just an amazing number of things that can come out of these shows.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Well, if you could say that there's one thing that you've learned about the world from doing this work and one thing it's sort of revealed to you, what would it be?
What would it be?
One thing's hard.
I'm just surprised at the number of people who want to participate in this kind of thing. As a psychologist, I used to scramble to get research subjects. I couldn't find people for some of my research. I mean, nobody wanted to do it. And now you got tens of thousands of people who just can't wait to be part of your world and what you're doing is amazing. And I've worked in other areas, more serious areas like emotional intelligence and resilience. I have a number of other areas of my life as a psychologist that I've worked in. But wherever I go, they only want to talk about reality TV. It drives my wife nuts. They only want to drive reality. Oh, you're going to talk about reality TV again, right? That's what they're asking me everywhere I go.
Yeah. Well, you still have your business that you're running. You still do all these other things.
Yeah.
This is just a part-time piece.
Yeah, we're involved in ADHD. We're involved in so many different things, working with offenders and looking at reoffenses. We look at corporate success and leadership. I do a lot of other things, but now I'm being defined by reality TV.
Yeah. And you're getting a lot of subjects from which to figure out these
Oh
archetypes.
my God, yeah. Well, we haven't put that out yet. We've been getting them over the years on the shows, but now this test that I mentioned to you, we're just about to release it. It's a fun thing. We're just about to release it for fun.
Well, this has been a fascinating look behind the psychological scenes of reality TV. So I appreciate you joining me for Tell Me What It's Like to tell me what you've learned.
Well, thanks for having me. It's been fun, Stacey.
Thanks to Dr. Stein for joining me on Tell Me What It's Like. If you liked this episode, be sure to leave a rating and review. Next week, one of the early influencers, Chelsea Coulston, talks with me about what it means to be an influencer in today's social media world. I'm Stacey Rain. Thanks for listening.